Hi, my name is Ginger Wireman. I'm a community outreach and environmental education specialist with the Nuclear Waste Program at the Washington State Department of Ecology. Our office is in Richland, Washington, which is on the traditional homeland of the Cayuse, Walla Walla, and Umatilla people. I've been with the Nuclear Waste Program doing education and outreach for about 19 years, and today my colleague Ryan Miller and I are inviting you to talk about Hanford. Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ryan. So I've been with the Nuclear Waste Program for about 2 years now, and I'm a media coordinator. So let's start things off with and just talk about what exactly Hanford is. So the Hanford Site produced plutonium for the nation's nuclear weapons program during World War II and the Cold War years, and that generated massive amounts of waste and contamination that we'll talk about later. This history has made it one of the most contaminated nuclear spots in the world. However, since 1989, the mission has shifted from plutonium production to cleanup of the remaining waste and contamination.
So with this event, we're launching what we hope to be a series of live virtual events discussing high-level Hanford topics for those unfamiliar with Hanford, or people who maybe work there but don't really know what's going on different parts of the site, or people who just want a refresher. So the upcoming events will be a live presentation with one of our subject matter experts, scientists or engineers, followed by Q&A with the public.
So you probably hear Hanford in the news quite a bit, but why is Hanford important and what's all the fuss about? So before the government chose the Hanford site for production back, in the early 1940s, the area was home to 3 farming communities, and those were called White Bluffs, Richland, and Hanford. All of them relied on the Columbia River, along with native peoples. Everyone was forced to vacate to make room for the government's top secret project.
When the government took over the area, recruiting ads were placed in newspapers across the country, and people were invited to come and work for the important war effort. About 50,000 workers came to what was called the Hanford Engineering Works. They had to build all their own housing and all the processing plants and facilities to create plutonium. They created the B reactor in 13 months in total secrecy. Plutonium from the B reactor was used in the Trinity test in New Mexico and Fat Boy, the bomb that was dropped over Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945.
So Hanford ended up being a pretty big plutonium production project over the decades. From the 1940s to the late 1980s, a total of 9 nuclear reactors were created alongside 5 plutonium processing canyons, a plutonium finishing plant, and thousands of other buildings and supporting facilities that all aided in the plutonium production mission. Over the years, the reactors ended up creating about 67.4 metric tons of plutonium.
And that nuclear production work came at a huge environmental cost. The whole process was highly inefficient and produced massive amounts of different types of waste. There were thousands of contaminated buildings. About 450 billion gallons of water was discharged to the soil and to pits and trenches that weren't lined, eventually creating more than 100 miles of contaminated groundwater. Some of the water was discharged directly to the Columbia River. In addition, containers of solid and liquid waste were dumped haphazardly into the ground, and radioactive emissions were released from stacks at the production facilities. The worst of the waste was put in underground tanks to keep it safe from the public, and 177 underground tanks still contain about 53 million gallons of waste, and 67 of those tanks are known to have leaked at one time or another.
And that leads us to the end of the plutonium production mission, which in 1989, the U.S. Department of Energy, our agency, Ecology, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency all signed what's called the Tri-Party Agreement. And that's a legally binding agreement that governs cleanup of the Hanford site. Since then, a lot's been achieved in the cleanup mission so far, but just a ton of work remains. Some highlights of completed work so far include massively reducing the contaminated groundwater plumes, cocooning most of the nuclear reactors, demolishing thousands of contaminated supporting buildings, and substantial progress in the tank waste cleanup mission. And that's just to name a few of the projects done so far.
Yeah, and the work we do today has to stand the test of time and protect generations to come. So public understanding of cleanup and what the goals are is really critical to the cleanup mission. So this is why we're offering these talks.
So over the coming months, we're going to be exploring a wide array of topics relating to the Hanford site and its cleanup to help the public understand at a high level all things Hanford.
Prior to COVID, I would do outreach to Rotary groups and other service clubs, and my colleagues and I would attend STEM fairs and career fairs and connect with the public that way. Well, we've spent a year doing this live conversations online with each other, and we thought this would be a great way to do this with the public online.
So we know that Hanford's just a complex beast, and it can get really in the weeds sometimes, during public comment periods, if you see it in the news and maybe public meetings and other Hanford-related events. So these conversations, they're intended to be more accessible, more friendly, and more easily understandable by most people.
Well, these live events will predominantly feature scientists and engineers with our communications team from the Nuclear Waste Program. We are also looking forward to partnering with agencies who have a role in Hanford, such as the Department of Health or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or National Park Service from the National Monument.
So some of our upcoming conversations are going to center around a variety of Hanford topics, including the Hanford Waste Treatment Plant, Hanford history, aging structures and maintenance, ecology's role in the cleanup effort, Hanford habitat and wildlife, and a variety of other topics. And we really encourage everybody that's interested in these events to follow our Facebook and Twitter pages so that you can stay up to date on when these events are going to be, and just to keep up to date with other Hanford and ecology news.
Yeah, and if you have any questions or ideas for future episodes, please shoot us an email at hanford@ecy.wa.gov, and let's talk about Hanford.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.